The moment I opened the school gates, clutching my son's small hand, I thought I was heading home to my husband. Instead, I came home to silence. No shoes by the door, no coat on the rack, no toothbrush in the bathroom. He was gone. And not just gone. He had boarded a plane to Barcelona, sun-soaked and smiling beside his mistress, while I was still wiping cookie crumbs off our child's cheek. He didn't even leave me a note. Just a text. I need freedom. Don't wait for me. My world collapsed in a single breath. But here's what he didn't know. Betrayal has a way of hardening a woman. And years later, when he finally returned, penniless, ashamed, begging for my forgiveness, I was no longer the broken wife he abandoned. I was someone far more dangerous. My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 36 years old, and once upon a time, I believed in fairy tales. I thought I had found my prince, a man named Andrew, charming and ambitious, who promised me forever. We built a life together, our son, our home, our laughter echoing in the kitchen late at night. I thought it was real, but forever lasted until the day temptation called from Barcelona. That was when my dream became my betrayal. It had been an ordinary Friday. I left work early to pick up our son, Thomas, from school. He was 7 then, bright, kind, endlessly curious. He tugged on my arm, excited to show me the little clay dragon he had made in art class. "Daddy's gonna love this," he grinned. I smiled, though inside, something gnawed at me. Andrew had been distant for weeks, working late, secretive with his phone, his smile stretched thinner each night. Still, I clung to hope. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe I was imagining things. But when I pushed open our front door that evening, my hope shattered. The house was empty, his closet gutted, his suitcase gone. On the counter sat an envelope, inside, his credit card and a single line scrawled in his handwriting. "You'll manage." And then the text came, the words that cracked my chest wide open. "Don't wait for me." The hours that followed are a blur. I sat on the floor of our bedroom, Thomas asleep down the hall, staring at the bare spaces where his father's clothes used to hang. I tried calling, tried begging for an explanation, but every attempt went to voicemail. The next morning, photos appeared on social media. Andrew, my husband, laughing in Barcelona, a woman draped on his arm, wine glass in hand. Her name was Elena. Young, exotic. Everything he claimed I wasn't anymore. And there I was, left behind in the quiet suburbs, raising our son alone, humiliated in front of everyone who knew us. For weeks, I stumbled through life in a fog. I told Thomas his daddy was away for work, though he asked every night before bed when he was coming home. I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. How could I explain that the man who promised us forever had traded us for sunshine and lust? Bills piled up. Friends whispered. My mother's voice, though kind, carried the weight of pity. And in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. But here's what I've learned. Pain is a seed. Buried deep enough, it can grow into something unbreakable. Andrew thought he had escaped. He thought I'd crumble, disappear, become another abandoned wife in silence. But while he was sipping champagne in Barcelona, I was beginning a journey of my own, one that would end with him crawling back to me, not as a husband, not as a partner, but as a beggar. I thought the worst day of my life was when he left. But the truth, the worst and the best, was still to come. Because betrayal was only the beginning. Part 2, Backstory and Struggles. People often ask me, didn't you see it coming? As if betrayal comes with sirens, flashing lights, and neon signs. The truth is, it doesn't. It comes softly, wrapped in affection, disguised as ambition, hidden in everyday moments until it finally reveals itself when it's far too late. To understand how Andrew could vanish to Barcelona with another woman while I was picking up our son from school, you need to know where we came from. I was never the glamorous type. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Manchester, in a small red brick house with peeling paint and a garden my father swore he'd finish next summer but never did. My parents worked hard. My mother was a nurse, often on late-night shifts, and my father fixed cars in a garage that smelled perpetually of oil and rust. We didn't have much, but we had warmth. At least, that's what I believed as a child. But there were cracks at home, too. My father had a temper, one that flared when money ran thin. My mother bore the brunt of it, swallowing her pain with silence, convincing herself that loyalty was love. I told myself I'd never end up like her. And then I met Andrew. I was 22, studying accounting at university and working part-time at a cafe. Andrew walked in one rainy afternoon, all charm and confidence. He ordered a cappuccino, sat by the window, and scribbled in a notebook as if the world was his stage. He noticed me glancing and smiled. That smile, it felt like sunlight piercing through clouds. He started coming in more often, striking up conversations, asking about my classes, telling me about his big plans. I was smitten, not just by his looks, but by the way he spoke, like life owed him more, like mediocrity was an insult. To a girl who had grown up in a modest, cramped house, his ambition was intoxicating. Within months, we were inseparable. He took me to restaurants I couldn't afford, whispered promises of a future filled with travel and luxury. "We won't be stuck in small lives," he told me once, holding my hand under the table. "I'll give you the world." I believed him. When I got pregnant with Thomas at 25, Andrew's reaction wasn't the tearful joy I expected. He froze, then forced a smile. "It's sooner than I planned," he said, his jaw tight. "But we'll manage," I offered, nervous. He kissed my forehead. "Of course. I'll make it work." But even then, a seed of doubt lodged in my chest. Marriage came quickly after. A rushed ceremony at the registry office, my parents teary, his family distant. Andrew insisted we didn't need extravagance, that the real celebration would come later, when he was successful enough. At the time, I thought it was pragmatic. Now I see it was foreshadowing. The first subtle mistreatment began when I put my career on hold to raise Thomas. I wanted to return to work part-time, but Andrew insisted otherwise. "We agreed," he said firmly. "You'd focus on home. I need freedom to build my business. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under." Whenever I pushed back, he'd sigh. "Clara, you're being dramatic. You don't get how the world works." Those words, "you wouldn't understand," became his refrain. At first, I accepted it. After all, he was working hard, or so he claimed. Long nights, endless meetings, trips he swore were business-related. I convinced myself I was being supportive. That's what a good wife did. But Andrew's ambition was a double-edged sword. He craved success, but he also craved admiration. If a deal went well, he'd shower me with gifts, flowers, promises of the life we dreamed about. But if a deal failed, his temper erupted. "You don't know how much pressure I'm under," he'd snap if I asked about finances. "You'd fall apart in my shoes," he muttered once when I suggested we cut back on expenses. I began to walk on eggshells. If I questioned him, I was ungrateful. If I stayed silent, I was invisible. And yet, there were tender moments too, the ones that kept me hooked. He would scoop Thomas up in his arms, spinning him around the living room, both of them laughing. He'd press kisses to my forehead after arguments, whispering, "I just want to give you both more." Those moments made me believe, made me stay. Because love, when mixed with hope, can be the cruelest chain. But the financial cracks deepened. Bills arrived late, balances dipped, and yet Andrew always had money for himself, new suits, expensive dinners with investors, trips I wasn't invited to. When I asked, he'd brush me off. "You don't see the bigger picture," he'd say. "Trust me. I'm building something huge." I wanted to trust him. But every month, I felt the ground shifting beneath us. And then came the secrecy. His phone, once casually left on the counter, now lived in his pocket. Locked. Notifications silenced. He started coming home later, smelling faintly of cologne I didn't own. When I asked, he'd roll his eyes. "You're paranoid, Clara. Don't ruin what we have with your insecurities." Gaslighting. That's what it was. But at the time, I thought maybe I was imagining things. Until the day I wasn't. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Thomas had a fever, so I called Andrew repeatedly, 10 times, maybe more. He didn't pick up. Hours later, he texted, "Busy. Handle it. Handle it," as if our sick child was my problem alone. That night, when he finally came home, I confronted him. He exploded, shouting that I was suffocating him, that I didn't appreciate his sacrifices, that I was dragging him down. And in that moment, I saw it. The man I had fallen in love with was already slipping away. But even then, I didn't think he'd leave. Not like he did. Not so cruelly. When I found out he had boarded a flight to Barcelona with a woman half my age while I was picking up our son from school, the truth hit me like a freight train. The cracks hadn't just spread, they had shattered everything. I thought betrayal was just whispers, lies, and locked phones. I was wrong. Betrayal had a passport, and it was already in Barcelona. People think heartbreak is a single shattering sound. In my case, it was a chorus of quieter noises, the hollow click of a canceled card, the sigh of a fridge gone warm after the power bill wasn't paid, the soft buzz of my phone lighting up with a photo of my husband drinking vermouth beneath the Barcelona sun while I scraped spaghetti off a child's plate. That week, the house became a museum of absences. His shoes were gone from the mat. His shaving cream left a ghost ring on the bathroom shelf. I slept in a bed with an empty latitude. Thomas curled against my spine like a comma and asked, "When's Daddy back?" And I said, "Soon," because I couldn't bear to make him swallow the word never. By Monday, the real betrayal unfolded in numbers. I learned the joint account was frozen for internal review. The emergency card I used for groceries declined with a cheery beep that cut deeper than any insult. At the bank, fluorescence humming, a rubber plant gathering dust, the manager cleared his throat and slid a printout across the desk with the caution of a man handling an unexploded shell. "Several transfers out," he said. "International." "How?" I whispered. "I never authorized." "Some were approved via two-factor," he murmured, eyes flicking to my face. "From your email." I wanted to say my email's been locked for weeks, but shame kept my mouth shut. On the last night before he disappeared, Andrew had laughed at my request for transparency, then helped me by changing the recovery settings to keep us safe. I remembered the way his hand moved fast across my phone. Safe, indeed. He left me £78 and 20 pence. On the way home, the sky hung low and heavy, a lid on a pot about to boil over. I stared at the pavement and nearly tripped over a padded envelope propped against my door. Inside, the passport I kept in the file box, my signature page carefully removed, the velvet ring box that once held my grandmother's sapphire, now empty except for a single bobby pin. My stomach turned. That ring had blue like deep water and winter sky, the only thing my mother had kept when the world took everything else. I fumbled calls with shaking hands. His went straight to voicemail. His mother, Margaret, answered on the second ring. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding," she said in a tone used for children and dogs. "You know how intense men get when they're building a future." "His future," I corrected. He took the ring. She sighed. "Perhaps sell one of your handbags." "I don't have handbags to sell." "Well," she said brightly, "you'll have to become more resourceful, won't you, dear?" I hung up before my mouth betrayed me. The humiliation didn't end there. At school pickup, the mothers who once traded casserole recipes with me studied the tops of their shoes. One approached with the smile of someone balancing empathy and gossip. "Clara, love, how are you? We saw, well, you know, the pictures." Her voice made pictures sound like a contagion. I went home and opened the curtains wide, as if light could quarantine shame. Thomas held up the clay dragon he'd made. "I'll save it for Dad," he said. The dragon's grin was crooked, one wing slumped. I put it on the mantel and told myself not to break before bedtime. The next afternoons followed like a bad procession. A man in a high-vis vest knocked with a pink bill pressed between two fingers. Final notice. The electric hissed into silence that evening. The fridge gave one last rattle and died, the kitchen filled with the smell of milk turning. I boiled water on the camping stove Andrew had bought for rugged weekends away that we never took, and I held Thomas's spoon steady as he ate cereal softened in hot water without complaint. Bless him. Then came the text. A WhatsApp ding, Elena's name, how'd she found me, and a selfie snapped in a mirror. She wore my scarf, the green cashmere one Andrew had given me on our 10th anniversary with a promise. This is for all our winters. Her caption, some winters are warmer than others. Slightly smiling face Barcelona says hi. The scarf's fringe brushed her collarbone like a taunt. I tasted pennies. I started a folder on my laptop named Barcelona. Inside it, subfolders. Bank, utilities, photos, texts, Margaret, school, ring. Screenshots dropped like stones into a well. The transfer logs, the WhatsApp selfie, the power bill, the automated email confirming that my email recovery phone number had been changed 3 weeks ago to one I didn't recognize. At night, I wrote in a spiral notebook with a cover that said make today count in cheerful gold letters that felt like mockery. March 14th. Card declined. March 15th. Electric cut. March 17th. Thomas asks if Barcelona is near the stars. March 18th. Neighbor saw Andrew leave at 5 a.m. with 2 suitcases. License plate recorded on her door camera. March 19th. Elena's photo in my scarf. My grandmother's ring missing. On Thursday, a brown envelope arrived with important, open immediately printed in stern black. Inside, notice of personal guarantee activation. I scanned it 3 times before the word settled. Andrew had rented a flat in Barcelona, 3 bedrooms, a terrace, a view of the Gothic Quarter, using my national insurance number to secure the lease. My guarantee would be activated in the event of default. Signature, Clara Whitmore. Except it wasn't mine. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the hallway runner and tried to breathe around the thought. He didn't just leave. He took my name with him. A fever of a different kind gripped Thomas that weekend. He lay hot-cheeked on the sofa, hair damp, breath fast. I sponged his forehead while on hold with the bank, the council, the energy company. A call dropped. Another held. The theme from Vivaldi's Spring cheerfully suggested I remain patient. My call is important. While my boy murmured, my dragon's protecting us, and I whispered, yes, he is, to keep from cursing the whole world. Sunday night, Andrew FaceTimed. The screen showed a rooftop bathed in gold, strings of lights glowing against a violet sky. Music thumped faintly. He grinned with a glass in hand. Elena's laugh rang like cutlery in a sink. Look at this view, he said, as if I were a travel agent. You'd hate it, too loud for you. Thomas has a fever, I said. He asked for you. Andrew rolled his eyes. Don't make him dependent on me for every sniffle. It's unhealthy. Unhealthy, I repeated. The word stuck to my teeth. You forged my signature. He didn't miss a beat. I did what I had to do. You always lacked flexibility. He sipped, lips glistening. Look, this isn't a good time. We're meeting people who could change everything. He tilted the phone. Elena appeared, pouting, and blew a kiss. Besitos, Clara, she trilled. Say hi to the suburbs. The call ended. Something in me ended with it. Not the love that had been dying for months, but the part that kept putting bandages on a man wielding the knife. Monday morning, the school emailed. Thomas's field trip payment had bounced. I had paid in cash 2 weeks ago, folded carefully into an envelope with his name written in my neatest hand. I walked to the office, explained in a voice that didn't sound like mine. The receptionist, Barbara, with hair the color of meringue and nails like red commas, pursed her lips and said, we can extend grace this once, dear. A teacher walking by slowed just enough to hear, Grace, as if I had failed some moral test. On my way out, I checked my car and found an orange sticker slapped across the windshield. Outstanding parking violations. Tickets I'd never seen. Dates from nights when Andrew was working late. The total made my chest buzz. When I peeled the sticker off, it tore in half like wet paper skin. That afternoon, Margaret messaged, Andrew says you're being emotional again. Don't poison Thomas against his father. Men make mistakes when they're overwhelmed by success. A good wife understands. A good wife. I typed and erased. A good son doesn't use his mother's ring to charter flights. I let the draft sit unsent like a lump of coal. The next blow came with the post. A hospital invoice from Hospital Clinic de Barcelona for scans in Elena's name. The emergent care credit card? Mine. The card Andrew managed for family needs. Somewhere in Barcelona, my name was paying for the woman wearing my scarf. I didn't cry. Not then. I put Thomas to bed, stood in the kitchen in the idle dark, and listened to the house settle. The silence felt like a tide going out, exposing wreckage. Then I turned the camping stove on low, made tea, and opened the laptop. I Googled forged signature lease guarantor, what to do, and fell into a rabbit hole of forums, legal blogs, cautionary tales. I called a legal aid clinic and, to my surprise, a woman with a sandpaper voice said, "Come tomorrow. Bring everything. And if there's a grandmother's ring involved, bring that story too." I called my friend Sophie, the one person who hadn't gone quiet. In the 2 seconds between hello and my voice breaking, she said, "I'm coming." And she did, with a casserole balance like a crown and a long hug that stitched me together enough to last the night. She sat at my table as we made a list titled receipts. We added bullets, bank transfer logs, screenshots, requests certified statements, utility cutoff notices, WhatsApp from Elena, scarf photo, screen recording of Andrew's rooftop call, audio saved, guarantee notice with forged signature, neighbor doorcam clip, ask Mrs. Patel at number 12, hospital bill charged to my card, field trip payment receipt and school bounce email, photos of empty closet, passport page removed, empty ring box. Sophie looked at the growing list and then at me. "You're building a case," she said. "Not just a heartbreak." "I'm building a map," I said. A way out. The legal aid appointment was in a low building that smelled faintly of paper and hope. The solicitor, a woman named Ruth, with hair clipped short and a gaze that saw without staring, paged through my folder. She asked gentle questions, then sharper ones. "Do not alert him," she warned. "Not yet. Take screenshots of accounts. Freeze what you can in your own name. We'll file notices of disputed debt on anything he opened without your consent. As for the lease, we'll notify the landlord and Spanish authorities of identity misuse. Keep records. Date everything." She tapped my notebook. "This is gold. Keep writing." On the way home, the sky let go. Rain threaded the windshield like stitches. I parked a street away because a van had taken our spot, and when I reached our door, Thomas's clay dragon had fallen from the mantel. It lay in 2 pieces on the rug, wing and body separated by a clean break. I sat on the floor and cried then, silently, shoulders shaking, face buried in my knees, half for the dragon, half for everything it represented. When the crying wrung itself out, I glued the dragon back together. The wing would always show the seam. I decided I liked it better that way. The next day, a message arrived from an unknown number. "You don't have to make this ugly. Sign what Andrew's lawyer sends, and we'll ensure a generous settlement. NDA required." Attached, a PDF titled Marital Agreement Proposal. It stated I'd waive claims on international assets, consent to cooperative separation, and agree to no disparagement in exchange for a sum that wouldn't cover 6 months of our mortgage. The signature line already had my name typed, polite as a threat. Ruth's reply was swift. "Do not sign. Forward all correspondence. We'll respond formally." Then, "He thinks you're alone because he made you alone. You're not alone anymore." That afternoon, I collected Mrs. Patel's doorcam clip. The timestamp showed 4:57, Andrew loading suitcases, Elena's silhouette at the curb, a cab idling like a held breath. I exported it, labeled it Departure, MOV, and added it to Barcelona. I phoned the hospital, declined charges, and filed a fraud report. I snapped a photo of the empty ring box on our table and emailed it to myself, with the subject stolen. It felt like burying an artifact in the earth, with coordinates. By now, the social media of Barcelona leaked more than they realized. Elena tagged a restaurant. Its post included a group photo with a landlord I recognized from the lease letter, his profile public, his hashtags enthusiastic, hashtag eyes-ample penthouse, hashtag new tenants love. In the comments, a Hiro congratulated him by name and mentioned a UK guarantor with a wink emoji. Screenshot. Archive. Save. At school, Thomas drew a family portrait with 3 figures. Mom, boy, dragon. Is that us? I asked throat thick. And Daddy's on a plane, he added, drawing a long line in the corner of the page with a stick figure waving. He says Barcelona is where your heart goes when it's bored. Did he say that? I managed. Thomas nodded solemnly. On the phone. But my heart isn't bored. It's busy. That night, the electricity was back. Temporary hardship program approved. Thank you, Barbara with the meringue hair. And I sat at the kitchen table under honest light. I opened the Barcelona folder and scrolled through the proof of a life caught in betrayal's gravity. The kettle clicked. The house breathed. A calm I didn't recognize settled over me. Not the numbness of shock, not the quiver of fear, but the steadiness of someone who has finally located the lever. He had taken money. He had taken my name. He had taken a ring cut from my grandmother's sky. He hadn't taken my memory. I closed the laptop, pressed my palm to the dragon's mended wing, and whispered into the warm kitchen air. Enough. He had a passport, a mistress, and a view. I had a notebook, a solicitor, a folder named Barcelona, and a boy whose heart was busy. I thought of the line Ruth had drawn for me. Do not alert him yet. I thought of all the people who had underestimated a woman writing quietly at her kitchen table. I wasn't broken. I was angry. Anger alone won't save you. It's fire without shape, bright, hot, but useless unless you learn how to aim it. For weeks, I had been burning inside, but now, thanks to Ruth and my growing pile of evidence, I began to shape that fire into a weapon. The first step was patience. Andrew expected me to lash out, scream, file for divorce immediately, or beg for crumbs like the emotional woman his mother kept warning him I was. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed quiet. I replied politely to Margaret's barbed messages. I let Andrew's lawyer send draft after draft of insulting agreements, each one assuming I'd fold. Outwardly, I played the abandoned wife. Inwardly, I was collecting, cataloging, and sharpening. I thought often of Mrs. Patel's doorcam footage. Each time I replayed it, I saw not just Andrew leaving at dawn with Elena, but also the arrogance in his body language. He wasn't sneaking, he was strutting, as if betrayal was his right. That arrogance would be his undoing. Meanwhile, I started to build alliances. Sophie became my anchor, coming by twice a week with food and laughter that patched over the cracks in my spirit. At the legal aid office, Ruth's team began drafting formal letters disputing forged signatures and fraudulent debts. I even reached out to the landlord in Barcelona, careful, cautious, and discovered he was furious about missed payments already piling up. Your husband promised 6 months in advance, he muttered over the phone. Then nothing. If you want proof, I'll send invoices. And he did. Another file for Barcelona. Another nail for Andrew's coffin. But the real turning point came one rainy Wednesday when Thomas handed me a crumpled sheet of paper from his backpack. Dad called today, he said innocently. I drew this for him. The drawing showed 4 stick figures, me, Thomas, the dragon, and Andrew, far away on a balcony with a tall-haired woman beside him. At the bottom, Thomas had written in shaky letters, I'm still your son. I sat at the table, tracing those words until the paper blurred. That was when I knew my plan wasn't just about money, or even revenge. It was about protection. My son would not grow up thinking this was normal, that women were disposable, that fathers could buy happiness with lies. No. If Andrew wanted Barcelona, he could keep it. But he would not keep us. So I began phase 2, turning Andrew's greed against him. Through Ruth, we sent a carefully worded reply to his lawyer. I was open to negotiation but required full disclosure of assets, both domestic and international. I knew Andrew would balk. He hated transparency. He thrived in shadows. Sure enough, Within days, he called me directly, his voice dripping with contempt. Clara, you're being ridiculous. Just sign the papers. I let my voice tremble, just a little. I don't want to fight, Andrew. But I need to understand what I'm signing. He sighed dramatically. Fine. I'll have Elena send over the numbers. And just like that, the woman who mocked me with selfies in my scarf became his secretary. Every email she forwarded was another breadcrumb leading straight to their tangled finances. I archived every one. By early spring, my folder was a fortress. Bank transfers, forged documents, unpaid invoices, even screenshots of Elena bragging about our penthouse view with location tags. Sophie stared at the growing pile one evening. What are you going to do with all of this? I smiled for the first time in weeks. Wait for him to come back. Back, she frowned. He's in Barcelona, living his fantasy. For now, I said. But fantasies are expensive. And Andrew's always been bad at paying the bill. And I was right. By May, whispers reached me through old contacts. Andrew's business ventures in Barcelona were floundering. Investors backed out. Elena's glossy Instagram posts grew less frequent, captions edged with stress. And then, almost poetic, the Barcelona landlord emailed again. Your husband owes 3 months' rent. Shall I pursue him, or you? I forwarded it to Ruth. She responded with 2 words, perfect timing. Outwardly, I carried on with life. I worked part-time again, managed Thomas's school runs, kept the garden tidy. Neighbors whispered, but I let them. The quieter I seemed, the more Andrew underestimated me. Inwardly, I was waiting, because I knew sooner or later, Barcelona would chew him up and spit him out. And when he came crawling back, I'd be ready. He thought leaving me for Barcelona meant freedom. He didn't realize he was stepping into a cage of his own making, and I already held the key to lock it shut. When the front door rattled open one muggy June afternoon, I knew instantly it wasn't Thomas. His steps were too heavy, too entitled, too familiar. Clara? The voice carried the same arrogance it always had, though now it sounded frayed at the edges. I set down the basket of laundry and turned. And there he was, Andrew, back from Barcelona. Not glowing with Mediterranean sun as I'd once imagined, but pale, thinner, a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. His expensive shirt was wrinkled, his shoes scuffed. The shine was gone. Behind him, a suitcase sagged half-zipped. No Elena in sight. Where's Thomas? He asked, as if he hadn't missed half a year of his son's life. At school, I said evenly. He exhaled with relief, dropping the suitcase with a thud. Good. We need to talk. Clara, things in Spain, they got complicated. I made mistakes. But now I'm back, and I need your help to fix everything. I folded my arms. Everything? Like the forged lease in my name? Or the unpaid debts piling in Barcelona? Or maybe the hospital bills you charged to my card? His jaw tightened. I didn't think you'd find out. Oh, Andrew, I said quietly. I found out everything. For weeks, I had rehearsed this moment. And now, standing in the hallway with my evidence folder hidden just a room away, I felt strangely calm. Clara, listen, he rushed on, running a hand through his thinning hair. Elena, she wasn't who I thought she was. She drained me, left me with nothing. Investors turned, deals collapsed. Barcelona was a nightmare. I was wrong, all right? But we can fix this. Together. Together? I let the word hang in the air. The last time I checked, you were sipping wine on a rooftop while I boiled water on a camping stove to feed your son cereal. He flinched. I panicked. I thought I could give us more, and I lost my way. But you're practical, Clara. You've always been the sensible one. Help me restructure things. Cover some of these debts in your name, just until I get back on my feet. Please. There it was, the real reason he had come back. Not for Thomas. Not for me. For survival. I gestured toward the kitchen. Sit. He obeyed, eager, thinking he had won. As he sat at the table, I placed a thick folder in front of him. His eyes lit up. You've already started? I knew I could count on you. Open it, I said. He flipped the cover, expecting rescue. Instead, his face drained of color. Page after page of screenshots, contracts, bank statements, forged signatures. The photo of him leaving at dawn with œDonâ. The hospital bill. The landlord's invoices. The WhatsApp selfie in my scarf. This is, he stammered. Evidence, I finished. Every lie, every theft, every betrayal, catalogued. I've already filed disputes on the debts. I've notified the landlord. And these, I tapped the notarized pages, prove you committed fraud in my name. His mouth opened and closed, a fish gasping for air. Clara, you can't. I can, I said firmly. And I already have. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking clock above the stove. Then, in a low, desperate voice, he said, "If you expose me, I'll lose everything." "You already did," I replied. He reached for my hand. I pulled it back. "Think of Thomas," he pleaded. "Do you want him to grow up without a father?" I leaned in, my voice sharp. "He already has." The confrontation reached its peak at that very kitchen table. Andrew tried anger. "You wouldn't dare ruin me." I laid down a photo of the forged lease. "Already done." He tried pity. "I'll be homeless, Clara." I slid over the landlord's furious email. "That's not my problem." Finally, he tried bargaining. "Just cover the debts in your name and I'll stay. I'll make it up to you. We can start fresh." I almost laughed. The audacity of a man who thought betrayal could be patched with promises. "Start fresh," I said. "You ended us the moment you left. What I'm starting fresh is my life, without you." Then I stood, gathering the folder back into my arms. "I've already met with my solicitor. Divorce papers are ready. Custody agreements, financial settlements, everything. You'll sign them. Because if you don't, all of this," I tapped the folder, "goes to court, the press, and the police." He stared at me, horror dawning. For once, he realized he wasn't holding the power. You planned this," he whispered. "Yes," I said simply. "While you were playing in Barcelona, I was building my case." At that moment, Thomas's school bus pulled up outside. I heard his small footsteps racing toward the door. Andrew stood abruptly, panic in his eyes. "Please, Clara, don't tell him. Let him think." I cut him off. "He'll know the truth, Andrew. He deserves better than your lies." The door swung open, and Thomas bounded in, smiling, dragon in hand. He froze at the sight of his father. "Daddy," he whispered. Andrew's lips trembled, but no words came. And for the first time in years, I realized the silence wasn't mine anymore. It was his. He was cornered, stripped of excuses, staring at the family he thought he could abandon. And in that silence, I knew the real downfall was just beginning. The days after Andrew's return felt almost surreal. He had strutted out of our lives like a king boarding a yacht, and now he shuffled through town like a ghost. And I, once the silent, humiliated wife, was the one holding all the strings. The first cracks came quickly. Andrew signed the divorce papers within the week. He had no choice. Ruth made it clear that if he refused, I would pursue full fraud charges, armed with evidence that could bury him. His lawyer tried to bluster, but I slid the door cam footage and forged lease across the table. Their argument deflated like a punctured balloon. The settlement left him with barely enough to rent a modest flat. Most of what he once flaunted, our house, the car, even what was left in the joint accounts, shifted into my custody. For the first time, my name wasn't just on the bills. It was on the deeds. But financial ruin was only the beginning. Word spread through the community faster than wildfire. Neighbors whispered on doorsteps. Colleagues sent clipped emails. "Did you hear? He forged Clara's signature." Barcelona, Mistress, ran off. He lost everything. At the pub where he once bragged about deals, men turned their backs when he walked in. Even Margaret, who had defended him through every shameful step, stopped answering his calls. The final blow came when his own parents publicly sided with me, telling the church ladies that I had been the real backbone of the family. Andrew hated nothing more than losing the applause of others, and now he had only silence. Meanwhile, œDonâ, the mistress who had once paraded in my scarf, vanished as quickly as she had appeared. I heard through whispers she had drained what little money he had left in Spain, then moved on to another man with more zeros in his bank account. He had traded his marriage, his son, and his dignity for a woman who saw him as a wallet, and when the wallet emptied, so did her affection. Poetic justice, if ever there was one. But the part that struck me most wasn't the financial loss, or the social humiliation. It was watching Andrew try and fail to be a father again. He'd show up on weekends, promising Thomas outings that ended in excuses. A football game ticket got lost. An ice cream trip cut short when his card declined. The first time Thomas came home disappointed, he asked me quietly, "Why doesn't Daddy keep his promises?" I knelt beside him, my heart aching. Because Daddy has some things to fix in his life. But you're not broken, sweetheart. His mistakes aren't yours. And in Thomas's eyes, I saw what Andrew could never repair, the quiet realization that his father's love was conditional, but mine was not. Legally, Andrew was trapped. Financially, he was ruined. Socially, he was a pariah. And emotionally, he was irrelevant. The man who once called me useless now stood at the margins of his own son's life, a cautionary tale in the flesh. As for me, I was no longer just surviving. With Ruth's guidance, I secured our assets and rebuilt the stability Andrew had stolen. I went back to work part-time, then full-time, balancing it with Thomas's needs. Slowly, the house no longer felt like a hollow shell of betrayal. It became ours, a place of peace. Sometimes, late at night, I'd stand on the balcony and breathe in the quiet. Andrew had chased Barcelona for its lights, its noise, its endless hunger for more. And in losing it, he lost himself. Me? I found something Barcelona could never offer: freedom. Still, the question lingered. Now that I had one, what would I do with this power? Because revenge is sweet, but healing? That's something deeper. Andrew was finished. His empire gone, his mistress gone, even his pride gone. And I stood stronger than ever. But winning left me with a choice: keep looking back at the ruins or finally start building forward. Revenge was never the end of my story. Yes, watching Andrew unravel, his fortune gone, his mistress gone, his reputation dragged through the mud, was satisfying. But after the dust settled, after the papers were signed and the whispers quieted, I was left with something I hadn't felt in years: silence. Not the silence of abandonment, not the silence of betrayal, but the silence of peace. For the first time, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't bracing for slammed doors or cold dismissals. The air in my home was different, lighter. Thomas laughed more freely, his dragon figurine perched proudly on the mantel, its glued wing a reminder that even broken things can be made whole again. I poured myself into rebuilding, not for Andrew, not even for revenge, but for us. I enrolled in evening classes, sharpened my career, and slowly climbed back into the financial independence he had tried to strip away. Every paycheck I earned under my own name was a victory. Every bill paid, every debt closed, every penny saved. It wasn't about money. It was about freedom. But healing wasn't just about finances. It was about me. For so long, I had defined myself through Andrew's lens: supportive wife, quiet mother, background character in his pursuit of grandeur. His betrayal had forced me to ask the hardest question: who am I without him? The answer unfolded slowly. I was resilient. I was capable. I was more than enough. And, perhaps most importantly, I was not my mother. I remembered the nights I watched her endure my father's temper, silenced by duty and loyalty. I had promised myself I would never repeat her story, and though I nearly fell into the same trap, I had broken free. That realization felt like breathing for the first time. As for Andrew, he faded into a shadow of a life I once knew. He saw Thomas occasionally, though always on my terms. The boy no longer looked at him with wide-eyed wonder. He looked with wary curiosity, as if his father were a visitor from another planet. And maybe that was a gift in disguise. Because Thomas was growing up with a different example, one of strength, survival, and self-worth. In time, life gave me more than survival. I wasn't looking for love, but it found me quietly, like spring after a long winter. A man named Daniel, a colleague from my courses, gentle where Andrew had been harsh, steady where Andrew had been volatile. He never tried to overshadow me, never dismissed my opinions. He simply listened. And in his listening, I learned what love was supposed to feel like, not chains but wings. I didn't rush it. I didn't need to. But for the first time, I could imagine a future not built on fear or betrayal, but on trust. And so, standing here now, telling you my story, I see it clearly. Andrew thought leaving me for Barcelona meant freedom. But all he found there was ruin. Me? In losing him, I gained everything. If you're hearing my voice right now, and you've ever been discarded, abandoned, or told you're not enough, listen to me. You are more than the names they call you. More than the weight of their betrayal. Every scar tells a story of survival. Mine tells of a husband who left for Barcelona with his mistress, and of a woman who rose stronger when he returned broken. So keep fighting. Keep building. And never let anyone convince you that you are disposable. If my story spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us all, survival is the greatest revenge.